Jessica Alstrom, spiritual teacher, medical intuitive, and quantum integration specialist, answers your spiritual questions and assists you through understanding your personal process while providing tools and techniques to move swiftly through the journey back to light.
Good morning and welcome to the Transcendence Podcast. This is your host, Jessica Alstrom, and I have decided to do a part 2 of the Build Your New Reality in Your Old Reality. And the reason why is because I have been reading some of your feedback and some of your emails, and apparently some of you got quite triggered by that podcast, which is always a good thing. You don't really know what you've got to work on until you're triggered. So that's a good thing. Don't ever look at that as a negative thing. But I decided to spend a little bit more time, as I have this day off, to really do as many podcasts as I can while I'm inspired to do so. So I wanted to kind of move forward on that last podcast and pick up kind of where we left off. Basically, you build your new reality in your old reality. And the whole premise of that podcast was, before you jump off the cliff, make sure that you're wearing a parachute, which means I don't ever want you to hold on to your belief systems, but you definitely need to know what's vibrating at a conscious, subconscious, and unconscious level before you make any huge life change. Because, as I said in the podcast, life just starts to take a lot of time to get where you want to go. And if you've ever moved out of a situation and into a new situation and 6-8 months later you realize that this feels very similar, then all you really did was jump tracks to a very similar parallel reality where you were still vibrating the same belief systems and therefore the same characters, props, and circumstances needed to be there in order for you to have your character play that part still. I mean, it's your character's based on frequency and vibration. The character that you're playing right now is a combination of past, present, and future ideas of yourself, how you see yourself, the masks that you wear, the shadows you're holding, the belief systems that you carry at a cellular level, and an energetic level. And if you've noticed in my teachings, I don't really go into the whole spiritual paradigm of trying to explain the etheric field and the emotional field and the angelic field, because I think that can be very confusing for people to try to figure out what level of frequency they're vibrating through or where they're holding, energy or locked feelings. And the truth of it is there's 3 aspects of you. There's your body, there's the I am, which is the consciousness that's connected to the all, the one, and then there's the ego construct. And you came to a 3rd dimensional planet, therefore you picked up a 3rd dimensional ego. And your ego is just your filtration system. And your ego becomes the voices of everyone who's ever taught you how to be you. And if you've noticed, in one of my second Sundays, I made a statement that I've actually gotten a lot of feedback about when I said, you're always channeling. And a lot of people were like, what? What does that mean? Because at the end of the day, all you are is consciousness. So if you're going to have any sort of expression or experience, you need to channel the energy through some sort of personality construct, because you, in your truest form, have no personality. You are just that consciousness of love, which means anything that has to filter through love makes a personality. And I'm going to tell you that the number one cause of suffering on the planet, the root cause of everything. I'm going to share a secret with you. And here at Transcendence, that's all we do, is we search for root causes. But what if I told you that the root cause of every single disease, every single broken leg, every single missed opportunity, every single abundance issue that you've had, any sort of falling out you've ever had, anytime you've ever been blindsided, anytime you've ever been judged, the root cause of all suffering is a broken heart. And it's funny because the last few years, I've kind of come out of the closet as a medical intuitive, which I try not to promote myself as, because I don't want a bunch of people coming here to say, okay, what's wrong with me? If they're wanting to work with me, I definitely will use that intuitive empathy that I have for helping them see the blind spots that they cannot yet see. But I'm not working as a medical intuitive in the form of just giving people information about, their bodies and trying to scare them about what diseases they're carrying. So, but I will say that over the last few years, people have come into my office and they tell me this: the doctors don't know what's wrong with me. I have aches and pains, I have heavy blood, I have this, I have that, and they can't find it. And my answer to them is, that's because a doctor can't diagnose a broken heart. And what happens is all you are is love. That's all you are. And you come down to a planet where basically that gets broken. Your heart gets broken when someone doesn't allow you to be the pureness of who you are and the uniqueness of who you've came to share your life stories with. When you've come and loved someone unconditionally and haven't been loved back, or you've given your life away because you are trying to be successful and therefore you've kept relationships away, I'm telling you that it all comes from a broken heart. At what age your heart broke, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you unless I was sitting in front of you doing, a Skype or a phone call or something like that. But the root cause is always the same, because there's only two real emotions on the planet, and that is love, and that is absence of love. And if you are not feeling loved or seeing love or experiencing love or able to give love, that's all from a protective situation where your heart's been broken. And the alchemy process is basically filling it all back up with light and filling it all back up with love. And I had a client yesterday say, well, how do you mend a broken heart? And I said, well, if your daughter was sitting next to you and her heart had just been broken, what would you do? And she said, I would love her. And I said, it's really that simple. All you have to do is love the broken parts of you. And the root cause of all of your suffering and all of your money issues and all of your fear has come from an initial broken heart. Now, who initially broke it, it really doesn't matter. You can definitely go on the timeline and clean it up. I would highly recommend it. But the more cracks and breaks you have in that vibrational heart of yours, the more you're going to push people away, the more you're going to push your spirit guides away. You're going to push anything that might feel like love away, and this is why. If you've been in love before and it hasn't been reciprocated, what does that feel like? It feels like the worst pain in the whole planet. If you've lost someone that you love unconditionally, it feels like the worst pain on the whole planet. Therefore, we spend our entire lives pushing that feeling away. That's why we are over-parenting. That's why we are over-giving in our friendships. And we are being way too... we are using our empathy way too much in our relationships, because we are doing everything with a ton of action in order to protect our already broken heart. And once the heart is broken, you either turn into the victim or the perpetrator. And if you turn into the victim when it comes to a broken heart, you're going to find that it just keeps breaking and it keeps breaking and it keeps breaking, and your energy field is wide open, and you're just like a sucker sitting there for the next victim or the next perpetrator to come and victimize you or break your heart. You will be attracted to those who are going to break your heart further. Now, if you're a perpetrator, if you've chosen the perpetrator survival skills of the ego construct, then you're going to build a huge wall around yourself. And you're not going to let anyone in. And you're going to wonder why you don't have friends, or you're going to wonder why you don't, have a relationship, or you're going to wonder why you get passed over for the jobs, or, when you try to go out and build your dream job, it just doesn't work out. And you don't realize is that at an energetic level, you have built Fort Knox around your heart space, and the heart is telepathic. So in order to connect with your divine purpose and passions in life, the heart needs to be radiating its true frequency. And so when you lock it down, you're pushing everything away. You're not just pushing people that could hurt you away. You're pushing children away. You're pushing family away. You're pushing new friends away. You're pushing money away. You're pushing your spirit guides away. You're pushing everything away, all because you're afraid to be hurt. And I've been there, I've done this. I've done both sides. I played the victim and let, lots of perpetrators in, and then I've been the perpetrator and I've pushed a lot of people away. And, you can kind of flip-flop on this at different stages in your life. But the root cause is always the same, is somewhere, somehow, the pureness of you, the pureness of the frequency of unconditional love that was streaming through that little tiny baby, and that consciousness that was always there somehow got broken. And, when your parents don't love themselves, they kind of break your heart by showing you that they don't love you the way that you need to be loved. And it doesn't mean that they don't love you. It's just the way that you perceived them not loving you. You might thought that, your sister or brother got more love than you did, and you're perceiving that, and that's heartbreaking. And I mean, what's the difference between looking and noticing that your brother or sister are getting more attention than you, and being a little kid that needs that? And what's the difference between that and getting broken up with by a boyfriend or a girlfriend? There's nothing. It's a broken heart. At some point, your heart's been broken. And so when we try to rush through life, taking action, and basically we're trying to build a life around a broken blueprint. And there's cracks in the foundation, and there's water leaking in. And at some point in your life, you're going to develop mold, and you're going to develop a wonky ceiling, and you're going to develop all of these things, and you're basically going to age very quickly because you're trying to use action to cover up something that is very, very deeply ingrained within you. And when I tell people, they say, okay, so what do you see when you look in my body? And I'm looking, and I see the adrenals, going out of control, and I see the acid in the stomach, and I can see that the bowels are all turned around, and I can see the thyroid is, overworking or underworking. I can see the frequency in the brain moving way too quickly, which means they're probably having, 100,000 thoughts in a few seconds. I can see that the muscles are tired and drained of magnesium and calcium. I can see that the vital minerals that are, holding the whole body in a grounded state of being they're not available because your body is depleted of anything that is the same frequency of love. And I look at them and I say, you got a broken heart. And they just kind of stare at me for a little bit. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, I don't. And I'm like, close your eyes. Think back over your life. And all of a sudden, it's like immediately they either begin to cry or they look at me like that aha moment where they start to put the pieces together that when something's broken, it's never going to work right. And if you look back over your relationships, the ones that you've been drawn to, it's always so that you can fix the wounds, but sometimes the exact thing that we need to fix the wounds is only awareness, and so we jump into relationships that are going to further beat us down so that we can be more aware. Unfortunately, as humans, we're pretty darn stubborn as far as being conscious, and so it takes a lot of force to wake us up. It takes a lot of messages from the body and the car accidents and the bank account issues and the people triggering you. Those are all messages. Those are all messengers. And they're just telling you, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Become aware, become aware, become aware, become aware. And the more you get triggered, the more opportunities that you have to become aware of who you really are. Because we know that the higher self's frequency is feeling good and the lower self's frequency is to feel bad. The ego thrives in drama and the higher self thrives in love. And if you've been hurt, then you are going to be in self-protection. And whether you wear that protection as a layer of body fat around you, or you wear that as, a negative personality that repels people, or you wear that as, an introvert, or maybe you wear it as an extreme extrovert and you wear it as a narcissistic quality. So you can push people to see the outside of you so that they won't see the inside of you. Because I will tell you that most narcissists are extremely wounded little children. And you're trying to puff yourself up and use your personality construct as a form of being loved because you're dealing with a broken heart. And before I go into more of how you create your reality, I wanted to share a story because Susie and I, we actually went last weekend and I spoke at a suicide survivals group, and it was really large. And, as an empath and as a medium and as a medical intuitive, I get very overwhelmed in situations where there's a lot of people, especially grieving people. And so I was kind of doing my grounding and I was preparing myself and I was putting myself in a really high vibration. And, we walked through the door and the whole room is basically filled with family members that have lost people. And whether they've lost children or brothers or sisters or, aunts or uncles, they've lost family. And they lost friends, and it's all been from suicide. And so I'm looking at this huge crowded room, and I know that I'm about to go speak about something that the room probably can't hear. And I'm not going in as a medium. I'm actually going in to talk about our MindFit device that we have a grief series for, so that we can help the brain and body recover from the deep, basically broken heart. And as I walked into the room to get ready to speak, I was bombarded with deceased family. They were all trying to, speak through me to give their family a message. And I kind of had to say, what, this isn't why I'm here. And this isn't what isn't what today is about. Today is about empowering the ones that have been left behind. And what I noticed as I looked around the room is I saw so much sickness and disease. I saw so much broken heart. And, that it was just pouring out of everyone. It's like their broken heart was breaking everything else. It was breaking the immune system. It was breaking the brain-body connection. It was breaking the way that the body was breathing. It was shallow breathing because there's so much loss and fear there. And as I tapped into the room and was kind of picking up some of the thoughts that these families were having, there was so much guilt and shame that it was overwhelming. It was like everyone in that room felt responsible somehow for their loved ones leaving them. I could see them playing over and over the stories. If I would have just said this, or if I would have just done that, and I would have just been here, and I would have just gotten them help. And to me, it was easy to feel the heartbreak, and it was easy to feel the guilt and shame. And I knew at that moment I had to change my entire speech and my whole talk, because when you have a ton of guilt and shame running at a vibrational place, you don't want to heal. Now, I need you to hear that. When you have a lot of guilt and shame, you will not allow yourself to heal, because you feel like it's your fault. And why should you be allowed to live and be happy and get over this? Because for some reason, the ego has convinced you that this is your fault. And so I knew that only about maybe 10% of the room was going to actually be able to hear me. And I knew that everyone else was going to probably just completely ignore what I was saying. And the reason why is because when you're not ready to heal, you could have, Jesus standing next to you and put his hands on you and you wouldn't receive it. Because like I said, when you have a broken heart and you're perpetrating that broken heart, you are pushing help away. You are pushing love away. You are pushing guidance away. And when you feel a lot of shame and guilt, you don't feel you deserve to heal. And so a lot of people who have lost people to suicide will develop, or just death itself, not even necessarily suicide, will develop a ton of guilt and shame around it, especially if you're empathic. Maybe you did know the signs and you just didn't say anything, but you know what? It's not your journey. And you can never, ever help anyone truly with their journey unless they're ready to receive the information and unless they're ready to heal. So just like the person who has taken their own life, they weren't ready to heal the way that you were wanting to heal them or talk to them. They had other solutions of how they were going to get away from their own broken heart. Because I'm going to tell you, and I know I say that a lot, but suicide comes from a broken heart. Okay? You don't take your own life if your heart isn't deeply, deeply broken on every level, conscious, subconscious, and unconscious levels. Because that's not really a choice. That's more of like a desperation action where you just can't live anymore. And, I do know what that feels like. And I have so much compassion for that. But going back to the room, that's why I don't really care if I get good reviews or bad reviews on my work. Because if I get bad reviews on my work, that just means that someone's not ready to hear what I have to say. And why should I judge that? I don't take that personally. And if someone has something positive to say about my work, then I know that that's somewhere that they are ready to receive what I have to say. Not that I am the only one with the information, trust me. But, that was a really empowering experience being in that situation where I wouldn't normally go do a talk at that type of group, especially who wasn't ready to receive my translation of how we can heal through this. And people started to realize that I was a medium, and they kind of started to bombard me and want messages and confirmation. And the one thing that I did say is, I'm not going to bring everybody through today, but I am going to tell you that every single one that has, spoken in my ear, for anyone in this room, they are saying that it's not your fault. And there was nothing that you could have done. There was nothing that you needed to do. There was nothing you need to do except love yourself now. And I will tell you, only about 10% of that room even had a clue of what I was saying. And I was not speaking in metaphysics or spirituality. I was kind of speaking in science. So it was interesting. And it just, for me, it just kind of reconfirmed that when you're really ready to hear something, it doesn't matter who's saying it, you're going to hear it. And when you're really ready to not heal because you're using guilt and shame as a wall to not allow yourself to be more than what you've been, and that's a choice too. And I think what was happening is it was when I was triggering people with that last podcast, it had to have been guilt and shame that was coming up, and the fear was being triggered that, I just can't do this anymore. I can't be here anymore. And whether it's a job or a relationship, when you have a emotional connection with anything, it's like a death when you remove it. And I don't know if you've ever watched two really strong magnets come together, but it's pretty intense. And I was watching I'm developing some kids classes right now to explain vibration and frequency using magnets with my 11-year-old, sorry, I think he's 12. I would hate for him to say 11, client. And we're watching this thing on YouTube, and it's so cool because it's like these two giant magnets, but someone put a cup in the middle of it. And as these magnets came together, it smashed the cup and just destroyed the cup. And that's what happens when you kind of jump ship, is you jump into a new reality and then all hell breaks loose around you, because basically your universe is destroying your reality that you have just jumped from in order to move it out of the field. And that's why a lot of times when you get a new job, all hell breaks loose, or you move into a new house and the plumbing's leaking. Is that's the manifestation of the same energy, that the magnet's coming together and it's destroying the old. And I think that's what people are afraid of. So going back to the talk that I was having and the broken heart, I mean, I hope this is resonating, because, you know, everything that we're doing at Transcendence is to find the root cause, but there's only one root cause, and that's a broken heart. And whether that's just something that you observed and bought into, I want you to look back over your life and look at all of the things that you have avoided or denied yourself of, or not let yourself have, because you have a broken heart that you're trying vividly to protect, okay? Viscerally to protect. If you don't have money right now, it's coming from that. It's coming from a broken heart. Now it's like, what? Money is love. Money is freedom. Money is creative expression. You use money to buy the paintbrushes, don't you? Not that you couldn't get it somewhere else, but in this particular country, we use money as a form of love. And if you've got a broken heart and you think at some, you know, cellular level that it's your fault that your heart is broken, then, you know, you made mom and dad not love you, and therefore your heart got broken, or you were, you know, too fat or not cute enough, or you weren't your sister, or, you know, you weren't born in the right time, or you were a problem, or whatever. You know, the ego is pretty good at manipulating how you see yourself. You will resist thriving. You will resist opportunities. But there will be times when you start to move into this broken reality that you keep regenerating over and over again, and you keep jumping ship, and you keep jumping ship, and you keep running, and you keep running, and you keep running, where that heartbreak, it just follows you. And I have this amazing client, and she is quite wealthy, and just beautiful on every level. And, you know, she kind of secretly came to see me and didn't want anyone to know that she was seeing me, which I thought was funny. But, you know, she sat down and she just kind of looked at me, and she's like, I don't know why I'm here, which happens a lot, by the way. And I said, well, I do. And she's like, what do you mean? I go, you got a hole like this big inside of you. And she was like, can you see that? And I said, I can feel that. She's like, I know, but, you know, nobody would know that from the outside. I said, of course not. You're beautiful. You've got it all together. You got great kids. You know, you've got a beautiful life. You're abundant. Nothing can fill the void of a broken heart. No money, no drug, no food, no relationship. And the heartbreak is the heartbreak of your own self. It's like self-love has the broken heart. And you hear so much New Age, so many spiritual teachers talk about self-love, 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 self-love. And you're like, yeah, so why do you keep treating yourself like crap? You know, it's like, you know that that's the way to enlightenment is self-love by now. I mean, that's all over. That's every spiritual teacher's theme. So yet, why do you keep treating yourself like crap and talking down to yourself and resisting help and resisting love? Because you're still at a cellular level, at a subconscious, unconscious level, you are protecting yourself from the very thing that you're feeling anyways. You're pushing people away because your heart is broken. Yet all you want consciously is a relationship. You're pushing your weight loss goals away by eating the cookies when you want nothing more than to be who you know you are in the mirror. You know, you're pushing the healer away, or the spirit guide away, or the solution away, the medicine away that's actually really going to help you. Because at some level, you don't think that you deserve to heal this. So the guilt and shame is what keeps the heart broken. And And I hope this is kind of resonating, because it's really this whole process. And I'm going to get rid of the term spiritual completely and go just back into awareness. The whole awareness process is just about recognizing your own truth and standing in your own energy and looking deep within yourself, and looking at all of the choices that you've made your entire life, and what you used to fill the void and who you used to fill the void, and how it's just never worked for you, and how through maybe your journey you are developing self-love and you are getting rid of guilt and shame, and that's lifting the veil of fear. And when the veil of fears begins to thin, then you become more aware, and the more awareness you have, the more you see yourself, and the more you see yourself, the more you can love yourself, and you treat a broken heart the same way that you would treat a friend that was going through dealing with a broken heart. You're just going to be there for yourself. And, we talk a lot about intuition here at Transcendence, and intuition is just your first 3 seconds. After that, it moves into logic. And as soon as it hits logic, now you're channeling everybody's voice from the past. You're channeling mom's perspective, dad's perspective, religion's perspective, society's perspective, the media's perspective. And after the 3 seconds, you're confused. And I always say that the true definition of intuition is trust. And if you can't trust that first 3 seconds, then it will be channeled by something other than you. And you will move into the guilt and shame filters. And you will have an intuition to go see me, which happens all the time. And you make an appointment, and then by the time it's moved into logic, then you either no-show or you get here and you're just looking at me like, I don't know how I got here, and that happens all the time. And it's funny because people will just walk in and go, I don't know why I'm here. And Susie and I just look at each other and laugh, because it just literally happens all the time. So to kind of go back into the continuation of, maybe I've been blubbering a little bit, but continuation of how you build your reality and your new reality is what if you just spent an entire week looking for your broken heart? What if you did that? What if you just looked at all the times that your heart's been broken? Unrequited love, or someone who you gave and gave and gave and gave and gave and never saw you. Maybe it was your sister being prettier than you. Maybe it was, your dad wasn't there to be at your soccer game. And, just like in the mind of a child, it doesn't need to be like what an adult would envision a broken heart to be. It's more of like a broken spirit. And, my story for that is my 3-year-old. He's extremely independent, definitely new energy child. And he has definitely got his own mind made up. And I am very, very embracing of that authenticness about him. And authentic doesn't always mean nice. Authentic means real. It means emotional, it means human, and it means spirit, and it means all mixed together for one complete expression. And you have good days and you have bad days, and you're allowed to be mad and you're allowed to be sad. And I really embrace that in him. And his dad is very, what's the word? A little bit stronger in the area of discipline. And I think he's good for me at times, because he grounds me in, let's make sure that he has life skills, and let's make sure that, he knows how to function in society so he won't get really lost. And so there's a good compromise there. But one thing that I've noticed is my 3-year-old literally hates or hated school. I mean, found the best Montessori we could. It's definitely not cheap. And I walk in there, and just the vibration is just amazing, and all the teachers are just amazing, and everything is miniature, and it's like, I want to go here. The child in me is like, I definitely want to go here. And he just literally, we pull up, and he starts to have a panic attack, and he's 3. And I'm working on creating my own school right now for this exact reason, because there is a lot of things that I would do different in my own school than what the Montessori program is. Although it's fantastic, I would bring more mindfulness and more metaphysics into my school, which I'm working on. Anyone that wants to know about that, please email me. So I'm working on that, but until I have that up and running, he's got to go somewhere. And I realized is that when he would get into his panic attacks, that would trigger me back to when I used to have to go to school, and I would hide, and and I would have talks with his dad about, he just doesn't like it, and he has a panic attacks, and we get there, and he's just like so upset, and and Dad says, well, we don't have a choice. And this is what we're doing right now. And, until your school gets open or until we have another solution, it's like, this is the way it is. And he's got to be able to do, what he needs to do. And to me, it's like he's pushing all of my mommy buttons, because it's just so hard to watch your little guy in pain and suffering, especially when, you feel like, oh, that mom guilt gets triggered. I should be homeschooling. And what I realized is when I sat in meditation about the way that I could help him, is realize why he doesn't want to be at school is because he has a broken heart. It's like he has been babied by me and under my wing and next to me, and I've been his best friend, and his dad's been his best friend, and we've been there every second, and then one day everything changes and he's gone from us 6 hours a day. And he is with people who don't understand him and don't speak to him the same way. And he's eating food that he wouldn't normally choose. And he's doing activities that he's not choosing. And he basically went from complete choice to no choice. Or we could say complete choice to complete structure. And I realized I started having so much compassion for him, because it wasn't like he was dealing with indigo authority issues. He was dealing with a broken heart. And, he was having separation anxiety because, it's like we have been there for him every step of the way, and then one day everything changes. And that's what I mean about, don't belittle the broken heart within you, because it could have been that simple. It could have been simple as starting preschool and leaving mom, or, mom being late picking you up one day and you're the last kid there. It's like we don't realize how traumatic that is. So there's so many little things that if you don't give yourself credit for and go back to the root, then nothing will ever change. And since I've started to realize that all it is broken heart, and what can I help him do to mend that broken heart while we can't change the situation, is, I'm a really big advocate of conscious parenting, and I think that our kids are as old as we are soul-wise. And I think that if we don't really honestly communicate to them, then that's our fault, because they can definitely hear us, and they're not processing everything we say through a belief system. So they take everything we say very, very literal. Okay. And so what I decided to do is just talk to him soul to soul. And I wanted to go in and I wanted to apologize to him and tell him that, I'm so sorry that I had to leave you. And it's not because I don't love you. It's because I got to go to work, and I'm going to help people when I go to work. And it's basically like really talk to him about that. And I showed him all the different ways that he can love me in the times that we're together, and all the different ways that I can love him when we're together. And he gets to love himself while he's at school, and that's his job, which means that he doesn't have to do things that are unloving with himself at school. And, I was probably ranting and raving like I always do. And, even if he got 5% of it, which at one point he looked at me and he said, okay. And it was amazing because, we were at dinner that night, and it was kind of synchronistic. And we were just talking, and his dad said, so, did you cry at school today? And he said, no. And he said, yeah, because I go to work and I help people. Mom goes to work and helps people. And Luke goes to work and helps people, and he helps himself. And Luke, my son, looked at him and said, yep, going to school is my job. And part of me was like, oh man, we broke that stallion. He's like finally like, okay. But there was part of him that was like, there was a new sense. And I've noticed that instead of being really, really traumatized on the way to school, he's much more loving, and he's excited that I'm going to pick him up, and he's excited about what we're going to do after school. And I've noticed that he's been interacting with more kids at school and doing more, functions and less independent things. And so that's just, a story that I wanted to share, because at the root, it doesn't have to mean that you got abused. It could mean that you started school and had to leave mom. What's the difference? A little 3-year-old leaving their best friend in the world and their safety blanket for 6 hours a day, or getting dumped by your boyfriend. It's really not that different. And so when I kind of found the root cause, I noticed the charge started to shift, and the charge started to blow on my end and his end. And I realized that the same reason why I didn't want to go to school is because I didn't want to leave, my safety space. And I didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel loved, and my heart was broken. And so I started to do a ton of timeline work around the broken hearts. And I noticed that we both started to do better with the school process. So going back to how you build your reality and your new reality is you want to honor where you've been. And I know I said that in the last segment, but if you don't take into account all the broken parts of you, then, like I said, it's trying to build a house on a broken foundation. It's going to at some point crack or break, and you're going to want out, and you're going to want a new one. And then what happens is you leave that old one behind, and then there's heartbreak there, and you just leave a trail of heartbreak. And I always say, hurt people hurt people. And so what happens is, if you've decided to perpetrate your broken heart, then you will be the person who breaks people's hearts. You will be the person who hurts people's feelings. And that's just your the way that you felt safer protecting your broken heart. And as you build your new reality, you've got to take into account who you've been, and sit with yourself and love all your broken hearts. Because if you do, then what happens, and that heart starts to mend. Like I said, the heart is telepathic, and the heart begins to communicate not just with your spirit guides again and your angels again, but the universe. And that desire that you have pushing through your heart center begins to communicate very loudly to the universe. And it's not filtered with guilt and shame, and it's not a broken intention, and it's not filtered through an ego system. And as soon as the heart mends, the ego has a hard time driving your life. And because your heart center has its own unique brain function. And, if you've listened to any of Bruce Lipton's work, he talks about finding the honeymoon effect and falling in love and letting that current and that frequency carry you through love, or carry you through life. And that's where all of your abundance is in the frequency of love. And that's where all of the magic is in the frequency of unconditional love. And so if that's what a doctor who basically studies DNA and genetics and frequency and vibration is saying, then all you really have to do is find the frequency of love, which means that you have to find your broken heart. Because if you don't have everything you've ever wanted right now, it's coming from that. And so we do that. A lot of people are like, I don't want to wait 30 days to, quit the job. I can't stay here anymore. And I totally understand that. And you are safe to quit the job. You're safe to leave the relationship. But I would say take 30 days and mend yourself and heal yourself and spend time with yourself. And if you've ever sat with someone who's grieving, you know that that's not just let's tell a joke and give them a hug and everything's better. There's time, and there's space, and there's feelings that need to surface, and there's conversations we need to have with ourselves, and there's energy work we need to do on ourselves. I mean, you can literally, here's a technique that I've used with people and myself, is you can literally close your eyes and drop into your heart and look at it for all of its broken pieces that it's in. And you can see how broken it is, and you can see all of the lost loves and the missed opportunities and the things you call failure, everything just piled into the cracks. And you can project that broken heart outside of you, and you can look at it as your, a work of art, and you can, through your mind, through your eye, through your third eye, through your heart chakra, through all of your chakras, you can literally send the prism of rainbow energy right into that heart center, right into that broken heart, and you can fill it with light, and you can mend all of the cracks, and you can paint it in love, and you can, nurture it, and you can fill it with gold energy and white light energy and blue flame energy and purple flame energy, and whatever comes to your, resonant intuition. Use that energy to basically heal all of the cracks, and then lovingly place it back inside of your heart center. And yes, it's a visualization, but anything you imagine is real. So any work you do in the fourth dimension, and all of this healing process has to come from the fourth dimension, because you can't call people up and say, hey, you know what? In the fourth grade, you broke my heart because you told me my painting was ugly. It's not going to work, because they too are dealing with broken hearts, and they're going to think that you are just now putting them down. And, because everybody's perspective is so unique, and everybody's universe is so darn unique, that nobody is going to be able to honor you the way that you need to honor you. The only one who can technically heal you is you. And so it's not a conversation you need to have. I mean, you can definitely, I have a whole process of, the letter writing system, and the burning, and the, the FU letter, and the letter to your past, present, and future selves. And, and that's all, part of my teachings that I'll do other podcasts on. But really, you don't owe anybody an explanation, because it's really just your perspective. The way your mom saw your life happening and the way you saw your life happening, two different stories. And so you try to go tell her, you broke my heart in the second grade. She's going to be like, no, I didn't, or she's going to go, I'm sorry, but it's not really going to be the apology you need, because she's not going to really feel that viscerally deep inside the subconscious the same way you do, because she's probably dealing with her own broken heart, and she might be pushing you away. And so how to build a new reality in your old one is to first go and fix all the foundation, to fix all the cracks, to, you wouldn't sell a house that was broken, hopefully. And that's what kind of happens, is you leave your reality behind and you jump into a new one, and then slowly everything starts to crack again, because the blueprint is a cracked heart. So I did want to share this podcast as kind of a second part for anyone who was hyperventilating after the last one, jumping right into fear. And there's nothing to fear. There's only things to heal. Nothing can hurt you in this world. Someone was talking about chemtrails the other day, and I said, if you are the vibrational match of love, then that chemical toxicity couldn't even come into your energy field. Nothing can hurt you. But if you got a ton of guilt and shame, then it's almost like you got a welcome sign. Yes, please hurt me, because I deserve it. And, I'm going to leave you with that, because nothing ever can come into your life, your existence, your reality, that you are not a vibrational match to at some filter point. And fear and guilt and shame and humiliation and resentment is all stemming from one root cause, and that is a broken heart. So what you need to do is you need to sit and mend. And that's what I meant about taking time and being with yourself, because you're just going to find cracked life after life after life after life, and you're going to get the job and it's going to be tainted somehow, and you're going to get the money, but then it's going to be, you're going to spend it too quickly, you're not going to save, you're going to sabotage it, basically, if you don't fix your broken heart, because you're going to perpetrate and victim yourself to try to protect yourself. And that's what all disease is coming from. That's what all suffering is coming from. And the louder the message from the universe is only there to smack you awake and realize where you are broken. So I will be recording some techniques to help you with this, but I left you with that one today. And, as we do more work on the timeline, then this will start to all kind of come together. But I hope you see how simple this is. We don't need to get into the cell activity and the positives and the negatives and all of that stuff. We just have to get back to simply that everything comes down to a healed heart, a broken heart, or a thriving heart. And as you're starting to heal, you've got to basically make choices that are not going to reopen the wound. And if you don't know you have a broken heart, you're going to jump into another relationship that's going to be a vibrational match to that, which means you're going to get into a relationship with someone else with a broken heart. And I call that wound mates. You're finding your wound mate. You're two wounded people coming together. And that could be a beautiful thing, but usually that's a very toxic thing. Because you're rejecting and you're reflecting, and your, law of attraction is acting as the big mirror so that you can see your wounds in someone else. And that becomes a very contagious, intoxicating, spell-like situation that washes over you, and you are no longer conscious of what's really going on. And I know you've all been in relationships that have felt like spells, or jobs that you've been in that felt like a spell was over you. And you know what? Energetically, it was, because you were vibrating the frequency of that broken heart. And it's like any child that has been hurt, they're constantly seeking approval and attention. And you know, there was one gal that I did meet at the Suicide Survivors, and you know, she came up to use the Mind Fit, and for 15 minutes told me every ailment that was going on in her body. You know, her spine was cracking, and her, you know, joints were turning into dust. And I mean, she was 15 minutes on this story about how sick she was, and I realized is that our illnesses turn into the attention that we need. And I'm not saying that to belittle any of your diseases or anything like that, but the child with a broken heart is still going to seek attention. And I've seen my son seek negative attention if I'm not giving him positive attention. Perfect example of this is if I'm breastfeeding my newborn baby and my 2-year-old is being good, I'm not really going to be noticing him. But if I'm breastfeeding my brand new baby and my 2-year-old starts acting crazy, then he's going to get a lot of attention from me, right? And so that's basically how the inner child learns to develop its attention-seeking mechanism, which is a form of broken heart. And children don't care really whether they get positive attention or negative attention. They just want attention. And as adults, don't we want the same? And so if you spend your whole life as an empath in, you know, narcissistic relationships, or you've, you know, dealt with illnesses and diseases, is that just not another form of you getting attention? Because think about it. Think about the last time you were at the hospital. Hopefully it wasn't recently, but you were doted upon, you were loved, you were cared for, you were told that everything was going to be okay. You know, your food was brought to you. Doctors were talking about you. Nurses were talking about you. And maybe this is the first time in your entire life where you've been the center of attention. Do you think you're really going to want to heal that if you're not conscious? No, because that becomes your way of getting attention. And I looked at this woman and I thought, wow, she's never been seen or heard. She's got major nurturing issues. She's dealing with a huge broken heart. And I just started to look into her timeline, and I felt so much compassion for her. And I just looked at her and I said, you know what? I totally know what you're going through. And I totally feel you, and I see you. And I really think that the Mind Fit might help. And she just looked at me kind of like, what? And I said, you can do this. You can heal when you're ready. And she kind of looked at me like, I don't want to heal this. And I just, you know, gave her a hug and walked on. Because again, fifth dimensionally, I don't have compassion for someone who's choosing disease, but I do have a compassion for someone who has dealing with a broken heart. And that's where my compassion was coming from. So you'll probably be able to look around your life and see people who are just lost little children seeking attention, and they don't care how they're getting it. You know, a bully who bullies you, that's a child seeking attention. And that bully is dealing with a broken heart. And hurt people because that's the perpetrator way to deal with your survival issue around protecting your broken heart. And why do you think the narcissistic empath relationship is so everywhere? Because one is feeling guilt and shame from their broken heart, and one is feeling guilt and shame from their broken heart, and they're both, you know, acting as unconscious reflections of each other. And so I will leave you with that, and I hope that this kind of helps you understand that I don't want you to not take action and change your reality. I want you to be aware of why you keep running into the same situations over and over again, and not getting a different result. So until next time, you know, look out for our other podcasts. And, you know, if you're wanting to train with us, email us at www.transcendencekc@gmail, and give us a holler, or, you know, ask questions directly to me, Jess Alstrom @gmail. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and you all start to mend your broken hearts.
Thank you for joining Jessica on this transcending episode. Email us directly at jessicaalstrom@gmail.com with your questions and personal challenges you would like addressed on the show. And join us on next week's podcast. You are not alone, and remember, your higher self speaks to you through people, places, circumstances, and events.